Greetings, everyone. So when I first started using Firebase, I was extremely excited. So many of the burdens of development had been lifted. I didn't have to worry about provisioning a database, spinning up a server, managing real-time connections, getting an SSL certificate, or purging a CDN. All it took was a few script tags and a single command, Firebase hosting, Firebase deploy, and then I had a website. Now, while this process was amazing and simple, it didn't really complete the dream I had for developing on the web. To complete my dream, I not only needed the infrastructure pieces taken care of, but I also wanted to have a really simple development process. I want to be able to write code, save changes, and deploy quickly and easily from anywhere. My name is Shailesh Nalawadi. I'm a product manager here on Firebase.
Hey, and I'm Frank, or Puff, and I'm an engineer on Firebase. And we are excited to be showing you some of the things we've been working on to make Firebase even better for web developers. Because I love to write code. And maybe even more than that, I love sharing code that I write with other developers. And it shouldn't really matter, right, if you're using a Mac like I'm going to do, or a Windows machine, a Linux box, or maybe even a tablet, or just a phone, right? All you should have to do is actually open a web browser and start coding, right, and making amazing apps. So that's why we are excited that we were able to partner with a few great online editors to bring you the best integrations for Firebase hosting.
All right. So who here loves glitch.com? Yeah, well, we certainly do here. And if you're new to Glitch, it's an online IDE for web apps, and it's got a built-in code editor, and any changes that you make, right away they're available on the preview window. Some of you might have seen this in other code sample editors, so JS, CSS, HTML docs, but Glitch is different. And in particular, it's got a built-in virtual machine, which means that the same commands that you run on your local dev machine, you can run inside of the virtual machine. And this opens up all kinds of possibilities. It's not just about demos, sample codes, but actually full-featured apps as well. So the new thing is, starting today, you're also going to be able to go into Glitch and click a button to deploy to Firebase hosting. So, Puff, what kind of app do you think we can build?
Oh, I know this one. This one is good. I want a social, local, mobile, crowdsourced weather app.
OK, well, let's see what it works.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to do the building for this one. So it's actually not that difficult. It sounds more difficult than it is. I live in San Francisco. And if you've ever been to San Francisco, we only have two types of weather there. It's either sunny or foggy. So, and when I'm traveling, I love to know what the weather is like back home. So what I want is an app that my friends back home can use, and they look out the window and say, huh, it's sunny. Then when I load the same app, I actually see what they typed. Sounds simple, right? I sure hope so, because we're going to build it right now. Let's switch to the demo. Cool. That was the one slide transition we had. So this is Glitch. Who had used Glitch before? It's not a lot. Well, for those of you who haven't, it's an amazing environment. As Shailesh said, there's an entire virtual machine running behind this. But it's actually quite simple. On the left here, you see that we just have a list of files. Right? I kept the README open now. We've done some prep work on this project. So there's a tiny JavaScript file and an index.html file. This is what we're going to be using to build our social, local, mobile, crowdsourced weather application. I'm not going to be typing everything because it's sort of like tricky right now. But let's start with the HTML for this. That is quite simple. It takes a label and two buttons. And yes, we call this slow-mo crow. OK, that's the starting point of this. Now I can save this. And then we go to the JavaScript for this. And this actually is quite simple, right? All we do is we take every button, and then once somebody clicks the button, we take the label on that button and show it in our label. It's fairly simple. OK, let's run this web app. So we've already done prep work on this virtual machine. That means that we have Webpack installed. And if you do modern web development, you know that you typically need a tool to bundle your JavaScript files. So we're going to be using that. And for that, we're going to open a console. So this is a full shell on the virtual machine. So I can run anything there, right? I can run ls, or I can run Webpack. So Webpack will now take my JavaScript files and bundle them. And since we have hardly any files, it's very fast. Let's switch back to the first tab. And then actually, let's show how this looks live. So this is the app we just built. And if I click, right, it says there's no weather update, but when I click, it shows whether it's foggy or sunny. Like, that's great. I just made something that shows me the button that I clicked. We're not really there yet. So let's do the next step of this. Next step is that we are going to be using Cloud Firestore to actually make this shared between users. If you're new to Firebase, Cloud Firestore is our newest cloud-hosted NoSQL database that we can access directly from within our JavaScript code. And when somebody makes a change to the JavaScript code or to the database, that change is automatically shown for all other users. They can see that change straight away. This is the power that you know of Firebase, right? We talk straight to the database from our apps. So we're going to be wiring that up. Now, if you've, again, done modern web development, we can't just start using Firebase. We first need to include it. So we see a package.json, which is how you do this through Node. So Glitch has an integration with Node. And I can actually say add package, and then I can just search for the Firebase package. Now, and we can install it. Now, in the status here at the bottom, you can actually see that it's running npm install. We all know that npm install can take a bit of time, so I hope the Wi-Fi is good here. So it's now downloading Firebase, and once it's done with that, that's available to my code. Let's switch back to the JavaScript and then actually start using Firebase. The first thing we need to do there is that we need to import Firebase and Firestore. So that gives us access to just those pieces of Firebase. It's like the minimal way to use Firestore in your web application. We also need to connect our app to a project. Let's actually have a look at that. So this is the Firebase Console. Sorry, let's start here. This is the Firebase Console. So this is where you manage all of your Firebase projects. We created a project for today called FireConf 2018. In there, we see the database. And this is the Cloud Firestore database. So you see that we have a collection called weather, we have a document called SF, and in there we have a field with the value sunny. So apparently it's sunny right now in San Francisco. Okay. So that's what we can now use from our code. So here you see that we have the same project ID. That's the only thing I configure right now. And this allows my code to find the project on the Firebase servers. We create a reference to the same document. So to the weather collection and the SF document in there. With that, we're ready to write the actual code. So when the user clicks one of the buttons, instead of writing the value straight to the label, we're actually going to write it to the database. So I'm going to take this, then it's ref.set. We give it a JSON object where we say condition becomes the content of the button that you pressed. So that's all that it needs to write to the database. But we want to do one more thing. We also want to show the value from the database on the screen. So we do that by attaching a so-called snapshot listener. Whenever I load this code, it will reach out to the Firebase database, to the Firestore database, and get this document straight away, and it will give it to us in our own snapshot listener. So we get a document, and then we take the label.text content, and we set that to document.data.condition. So you see that we just added a little loop, right? We moved the code from here to here. Now let's bundle all of this up again with Webpack. And now if we go back to the demo and we reload it, if you look at the no weather update at the top, you saw it just switch to sunny. This came straight from the database, because remember, that's the value we show here. If I now click foggy, it actually updated the database straight away. This is how easy it is to build an interactive web app that uses Firebase on Glitch. But yeah, this we could already do yesterday, right, Shailesh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now, are we ready to deploy?
I think so, sure. All
right. So Firebase hosting projects need a firebase.json.
Oh, I think I'm typing that one.
So let's go ahead and create that. In the top right-hand bar. So when you create a firebase.json, Glitch knows that that this is a Firebase project. So once that's done, Glitch is ready and it's set up to deploy. Now, before I deploy, I tell Firebase hosting where my app is located. And that is in the dist folder. So Puff, are you ready?
I think so.
Moment of truth. All right. Now, for first-time projects, you'll need to authenticate. And this is needed because of the special scopes that Glitch needs to be able to deploy on your behalf. Under the auth, once you're done, you should be able to see a list of projects. And you select the project that you're working on. And this is where the web app is going to be deployed.
You can actually see that it's also now installing some more NPM modules. But after that, it will run Firebase deploy, essentially like you would do from local. Give it a moment. I think it's already done, Shailesh.
Oh, there you go. All right. So now I think when you hit deploy for the second time, it's going to end up packaging up all the files and actually deploying to Firebase. Did it do that? Mm-hmm.
There we are.
Success. OK. I think now we're ready.
I already clicked. Sorry.
So I think there you have it, right? We've got it deployed from Glitch onto Firebase. And to be honest, this, in some sense, realizes the dream that I had, which is you don't really need a local dev environment to be able to do your coding. And really, everything happens in the browser. Now, some of you are probably wondering, did we give them a private API? And how is it that they were able to do all of this? Actually, it's not true. So I think earlier today, we mentioned the launch of the Firebase Management API. And that's what is actually powering all of this. So here's how it works. You start with a call to Google OAuth. And once you've got the Firebase scopes, you can get the access token. Now, you can also use the gapi.js library. And using either the token or the library, you can get a list of the projects, which you guys saw. And once you're ready to, and gather all the files that you need on a server, you can use the Firebase CLI to be able to actually do your deployments. Now, we actually also worked with another online code editor who used some of the same APIs to create a similarly seamless experience. And that editor is actually StackBlitz. Now, while Glitch is great, and its creative community is actually a real plus, and not to forget the virtual machine, it gives you all kinds of flexibility. But if you are developing single-page apps like Angular and React, we really like to use StackBlitz. So, Puff, let's give StackBlitz a try.
Sure, I like that. I actually really do. Who has used StackBlitz before? OK, it's a few more hands. I like that. As I said, I love writing code. I love sharing code. And StackBlitz is a great tool for that. So let's actually just do this together. So in the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to be building the ultimate Firebase demo app. We're going to be building a chat application. And if you follow along, there's not going to be any snippets. If you follow along, you have the same chat application that I have, but it's then yours. So let's go to StackBlitz. So let's see. We first need to select the technology. So we pick Angular, React, maybe Vue, Ionic. We could do Svelte if we're really the hipsters that we might be. It's like, It's like, OK. Then we either pick the default scaffolding or we start from scratch. We need to pick if we do TypeScript and what bundler do we... Choice anxiety here, Shailesh. What am I going to use?
Let's go with plain old JavaScript.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Plain old JavaScript is good. Let's create a new JavaScript project. OK, so this is StackBlitz. On the left, you see a list of files, just like we saw with Glitch. It's a bit fewer files, because actually it's very targeted to the use case that we're covering here. In the middle, you see a code editor. Now, it's a bit small. Let's make it a bit bigger. OK, one of the fun things here is that if we start typing, you see that it auto-completes. In fact, you might think I know this type of auto-completion because I use Visual Studio Code. And if you thought that, then you're right. The StackBlitz team took Visual Studio Code and is running it in a browser. This is great because it means that I don't have to rely on snippets. I'm going to rely on autocomplete a lot. So let's get rid of some of this. And let's get rid of whatever we had in the HTML. And let's write a minimal chat app. My minimal chat app needs 3 basic things. It needs a list so that we can put messages in that. And it needs a form. And in that form, we're going to have an input of type text. And we're going to have a button that we can use to submit. Is anyone typing along, by the way? Yeah, cool. Let's see who finishes first. OK, that's all the JavaScript we're going to use. Just like the demo we did before, it's not pretty, but it's going to be functional. OK, let's go to the index.js. Let me actually have a look at my slides. Right, the first thing we need to do, right, is we're going to use Cloud Firestore, just like we did before, but we're going to create a new collection. And the collection is going to contain our chat messages. So in that collection, each document contains one chat message, or each chat message is its own document. That's the simplest way to model this. But that means that we want to use Firebase from within our StackBlitz app, so we first need to add a dependency on Firebase. So just like we did before with Glitch, we're going to type into StackBlitz here, Firebase, and we're going to hit Enter. And now you see that it's installing dependencies. So it's essentially doing an npm install for us. Okay. With that, we're ready to start using Firebase. So let's actually import Firebase from Firebase. Don't know why I'm repeating myself here. Okay. I also need to import a few of the elements from the HTML. So we're first going to get the list. We're going to do document.querySelector. And the list is an OL, so let's do that. Then we're going to get the input. I swear, this is the most boring bit for the typing, but since I promised that I wouldn't do snippets, let's not do snippets. Oh. Wow. You can also see, by the way, that on the right-hand side, StackBlitz is constantly reloading the file. So if I have a typo, it actually gives me a quite explicit error message there, which is really helpful if you're live coding and your fingers might be slightly trembling. OK. Huh, that looks different than what I expected. Did anyone see what I made? What mistake I made? There's a yes. Thank you. OK. Apparently, there's actually still much use for pair programming. Thank you very much.
That was part of the script, right? That was part of the script.
Yes, that was part of script, yes. She's very long script.
Along.
This was part of a demo prepared at 4:30 in the morning. OK. So this is a chat app. This is the basic thing that we have, right? It doesn't do anything. And for a fact, we first need to start wiring some things up. So we're going to be using Cloud Firestore again. So we actually need to connect to the Firebase project. So for that, I'm going to go back to the Firebase console. And I'm actually going to go to the project overview. I'm going to tell it that I want to add a new app, and that's a web app. So it now shows me a bit of configuration information. I'm going to copy that. And we're going to go back to StackBlitz. We're going to paste it. So you can see that we have a bit more configuration information than we had before. But for example, the project ID that we used earlier is still in here. So this gives us access to many more of the Firebase products. Right? We can access the real-time database with this. We can use Firebase Cloud Messaging. All of those are available for us. Now, feel free to snap a picture of this. There's no secret information in there. These are not secret keys. These are actually just configuration data. This is what my web app needs to find the Firebase project on the server. OK, so we're ready to get started on that. So let's first actually create a reference to the collection that we had. So let's call the collection chat. And then we are going to do firebase.firestore. And then we have a collection, and that collection we call chat. Okay. So earlier we created a reference to a single document. This is instead a reference to a complete collection of documents. So now we're ready to wire up the form. I actually need to make one quick fix. Let's do this on page reload only. This is a setting that we're looking to actually automate. I can either write some code for it, or I can run it like this. So now we get rid of that error message. We're ready to start listening for the form. So we add an event listener. And whenever somebody submits the form, which happens when you either press the submit button or hit enter in the text field, right, we're going to get an event with the information that was submitted. So we do it like this. And the first thing I want to do is I want to prevent the default behavior of this form, because that would actually reload the page, and we're building a single-page application. I don't want to reload. I'm going to return false because I'm a web developer who likes to be clean. OK. Next up, we need to send it to the collection, to the database. So for that, we're going to do chat.add a new document. And in that new document, we're going to write what we want in there. So we're going to have a field message. That is going to be the text content, no, the value of the input field. Sorry about that. And we're going to add a timestamp, because chat makes most sense if actually the messages are shown in chronological order. So let's add a timestamp. Let's do date.now for that. Okay, I'm also actually going to empty the input, because otherwise I don't really know whether it's done anything. So that's all. You can see that we're reloading. So if I now type a message here, something like hello, nothing happens yet, except that this didn't work. Let's try this again. Yeah, nothing happened except that I made the input box empty. But that's not really true, because if we go to the database now, you can see that we have a new collection with 2 chat messages, because I typed hello twice, I just didn't clear the box yet. So we're already writing to Cloud Firestore. It's pretty simple, right? But we're still missing something to make this a complete chat app, because we actually also want to show the messages. So that makes that happen. We're going to take the chat reference, we're going to add an on-snapshot listener again. But since we're now listening to an entire collection, we actually get more than just one document. We get what's known as a query snapshot. And the query snapshot contains all of the documents in the collection. Now, it contains them in an order that we can't really predict. So we actually want to make sure that we get them in the right order, in the order in which the chat messages were entered. So we're going to actually do an order by. Then we say timestamp, that's the field that we had. And I want them descending so that the newest messages show on top, just in case we have a lot of chat messages coming in. So that's what we need to get the right data. So just like before, if I load the page, this query will pull the data from Cloud Firestore and give it to me. But also, when there's any update to the data, it will actually also call this function. So the first thing I want to do is I actually want to clear out the inner HTML of our list. Right? If we had any messages before, let's just get rid of them. Now we're going to take the query snapshot. We're going to run over all of the results in there. That gives me the documents. And remember, each document is a single chat message. And let's see. For that, we need to, for each chat message, we're going to create a list item. And what am I typing wrong here? Why is everything red? Got it. OK, yay for syntax highlighting. So we're going to create a list item, and then we're going to set the text content of the list item to the document data.message that we just entered. Okay. Then we're going to add the list item to the list of messages that we have. And if you look on the right, you see that the chat messages are already showing. Right? This is how easy it is to build a chat app. Let's type correctly. Okay. This is probably the world's simplest chat app you've ever built, right? If you've never used Firebase, this is like quite amazing. Okay, let's do the final step here. I'm used to getting an applause here, people. We're short on time. I should not have asked for that. Okay, let's do the final step. We're actually going to deploy to Firebase now, because this uses the Firebase database, or the Cloud Firestore, excuse me, but it doesn't use Firebase hosting yet. So you can see the Firebase icon here, and I love how it's nicely hidden in here. So if we click this button, we get a list of projects. I'm going to select the same project that we used before. So it's now, StackBlitz is connected to the same Firebase project. So if I now deploy, StackBlitz will take all the files that are part of my app, it will bundle them together, and it will deploy them to Firebase. That means that these files are now distributed over Firebase's global CDN, available on SSL, right? And I can just open the live website. Here's the same chat app that we have before, but now slightly more readable because it's a bit bigger. Okay. This also means, for example, that we can take control, right, of our hosting. So we can create a custom domain. So if you just register a domain and then connect that domain to Firebase hosting, you have your own chat app up in, what was it, 10, 12 minutes?
10 minutes.
That's all I had for the demo. Shailesh, want to take us home?
Thank you. So there you have it. We built our app. We deployed it to Firebase hosting, all from within a browser, thanks to integrations with Glitch and StackBlitz. So we would love to have you try these features out and let us know what you think. And remember, we used public APIs today. So if you think there is another development environment that could use this kind of seamless integration, let us know. Because we want to be able to provide easy ways for you to be able to deploy to Firebase from wherever it is that you're writing your code. Thank you.